In today's episode of Would I Buy This Again, I will be talking about the Olympus E-M1 Mark III. Now, to be completely honest, I feel a little bit inadequate talking about this pro-level, feature-rich camera that packs a ton of stuff that I've hardly touched upon in a few years since owning it. So if you're looking for a very in-depth review of all its specs, you should probably look elsewhere because this won't be it. On the other hand, if you're looking for a personal take from a fellow enthusiast who's been using this camera for a few years, then this is definitely the video for you. And if you're new to this channel, please subscribe so I can let you know when new videos are out. Alright, let's go to the E-M1 Mark III. First, a little bit about this camera. The Olympus E-M1 Mark III is a pro-level mirrorless Micro Four Thirds camera released in 2020. It has a 20 megapixel sensor, it has dual SD card slots, it's properly weather sealed, it offers up to 7.5 stops of image stabilization, it has lots of features like high-res mode, starry sky autofocus, built-in ND, focus stacking, and so on. It can do up to 60 frames per second, and this camera is pretty serious business and definitely aimed at photographers who like to go out and who expect their camera to be up for that as well. So why did I buy this camera? Well, I don't necessarily consider myself a pro-level photographer who really needs everything that this camera offers, and I didn't really buy it either, which is a fun little story. I used to own an E-M1, the original E-M1, which I got second-hand, and I really liked that camera, but after some time there was an issue with the shutter curtain that kept getting stuck, so I eventually sent it into Olympus for a repair. You have to pay up front for these repairs. I think it was less than 200 euros. Eventually they got back to me saying, "We're sorry, we don't have the parts that we need to repair your camera, but can we instead send you an E-M1 Mark III, a new E-M1 Mark III, as a replacement?" So I was super excited, of course. I immediately responded. I thought I have to respond before they changed their mind. So I said, yes, please, I would love that. Thank you so much. And after some time, I indeed got a brand new E-M1 Mark III and was over the moon excited with such an amazing camera. So thank you again, Olympus, for doing that. So what do I like about this camera? Well, I think there's really a lot to like about it, and I'll go over the top things on my list when it comes to this camera. First of all, image quality. I think this camera can deliver some stunning results. Perhaps it goes without saying, but I still want to mention it. This camera really is up to anything I'd expect in terms of image quality. It's not the latest model in the Micro Four Thirds format. It certainly doesn't have the biggest sensor out there, not by a long shot. And I know that that's something some people are always really concerned about. Well, let me tell you, when it comes to image quality, this 20 megapixel sensor at least delivers everything I would expect. If there's anything wrong with the image quality, I know it's up to me as a photographer to do better and not the camera that needs to be better. Also, the 20 megapixel sensor, the prints are just fantastic. I just made a few the other day from one of my recent trips. I don't know if you can see these. So these are some prints that I made here myself. There's this one from a sheep at sunset. I also have a few like these close-up portraits that I took at sunrise. I hope you can see just how beautiful and sharp they are. So these are printed on A4 size, but I'll happily print them at A2, up to A2 size, for example. I do sell these prints as well. They're usually either taken with this camera or my E-M5 Mark III. So in terms of image quality, I really have no concerns whatsoever. This camera can absolutely deliver, and where there's room for improvement, it's again up to me as a photographer to improve, to get better image quality, and never the camera. So super happy with it in terms of image quality. The next thing I would want to mention are the ergonomics of this camera. As you can probably tell, there's a very big grip on this camera. It's very nice and comfortable to hold. You can very easily walk around with this camera all day. It's quite light. For a camera like this, I mean, there's obviously the pens that I've recently reviewed. If you've seen those, are obviously lighter. but they're not nearly as advanced as this camera, of course. So for what this is quite light. It has a very nice grip. well, I mean, the ergonomics are all really designed and built for professionals. It's all very easy to reach. You have a lot of controls, so that's really great. The EM1 Mark III also comes with an external battery grip, so you can have an extra battery in the side here, and when this battery grip is on the camera, and I'll put it on right now, it gives you more grip to the camera. You can also hold it on its side, and what's cool about this is that you have all the controls you need right there on the side. So if you have the grip like this, you can still set everything manually that you need. You can control your focus, for example. You can control your aperture, shutter speed. That's really beautiful. I really love that about this camera. So in terms of ergonomics, superb. I'm really happy with it. I would say this is probably the camera with the best ergonomics that I own and tried. And I wouldn't dare to say you how many cameras I own by now. It's probably somewhere north of 20 already. Mostly older ones, I should mention. But the ergonomics of this one are really the best of any camera that I have. So on to the next. Speed is what I put on my list. So performance-wise, this camera is just really great. I mean, like I mentioned a few times now, this is a pro-level camera. It's super fast. It makes up to 60 frames per second. You just feel in everything that this is a pro-level camera. I do have some other newer models like the EM5 Mark III, for example, and still you feel that this camera is just a bit faster. It's really, yeah, super responsive. So that's something I really like as well. So next on my list is the battery grip. I already just mentioned that. I really like the battery grip. I use it a lot, not always, because I also often just like to pack light. But if I'm using bigger lenses, for example, like the 100 to 400 telephoto lens from Olympus, I really like using the grip with it because it's for one, it's a nice counterweight. It also really helps to use the camera in portrait mode, especially with longer lenses, when it's a bit harder to hold it like this. So it's much nicer to just have the firm grip on its side with the battery grip on. So that's something I really like, and still also have all the controls within reach. So big fan of the battery grip. If you've seen my EM5 Mark III review, I did mention there that I felt a bit sad that the EM5 Mark III didn't have the battery grip anymore, like its predecessors. I'm very glad the EM1 Mark III does have it. I would say I would probably prefer this over the EM1X that has the grip sort of fixed on the body, so you can't take it off there. I am quite happy that I can take it off on the EM1 Mark III because I don't always want to use it. I think it's nice sometimes to just have a more compact, lightweight body with smaller lenses, for example. Then I really don't need this extra grip or the extra battery with me, for that matter. What I also really like is being able to use an L bracket with it. I've got this one. I'll show you how that goes on and off. I don't have one of the more fancy L brackets that are out there. This one wasn't very expensive. I am not sure what it's called. I'll look that up after making this video, and I'll put it in the description below if you're looking for a good L bracket. This one works very well. I'm very happy with this. It wasn't so expensive, so there's a tip if you need an L bracket like this for your EM1 Mark III. So the next thing that I really like about the EM1 Mark III is the joystick on the back. I don't know if you can see it. It's very helpful. For example, if you use the electronic viewfinder, which I often do, and you quickly want to change the focus point, then you can use the joystick. It really works well for that. I think it's much nicer than going to the menu and having to use the four-way dial. Of course, you can also pick focus points on the screen if that's something you use. I don't use that so often because, especially with this camera with bigger lenses on it, I will more often than not use the electronic viewfinder, and having the joystick just at your thumb there is very handy. I really like that. So what I also like about this camera, that there's a lot of functionalities that it offers, like the pro capture, high-res modes, the focus stacking, all of these really cool features that I don't use that much, but I'm really happy that the camera offers them, because I do like to try them out sometimes. For example, lately I've been trying a lot of focus stacking with my macro lens, the 60mm 2.8. I'm definitely a beginner in that, but I do like that the camera offers it and that I can try it. So on to the things that I don't like about this camera. And to be fair, I had to think quite hard to come up with anything that I don't like about the camera. But there are a few things, and it's a bit of nitpicking, but I do want to mention them. For the first one, I've put one of my homemade straps on it. So I'll put that around my neck, because what I want to show you is that if you have a strap on your camera, and then this right strap holder, I don't know if it's called like that, it's right there on top of the camera, very close to the buttons here. And if you're just carrying the camera around and you want to make a picture and you're reaching out, this strap always goes, oh, it's very hard to show, but the strap always goes right over these buttons. So it gets very hard to get your fingers in between and you get stuck. So I find using this with a strap, if you're just out reaching all of the time, I found that very impractical. I don't like using that. So when I use a strap with this, it will usually be when I'm carrying it with the battery grip. So I put the battery grip on it, and this is quite handy either way if you're using big lenses, but you can use the strap on the bottom of the battery grip so that this area is just not covered, and it's much easier to reach. But I really don't like how this is positioned. I don't really know why it's positioned here. Maybe it's stronger like this, but I feel if it were on the side, like some other models have, it would still be much easier to reach the buttons here, and you wouldn't get your fingers stuck between the strap. So that's the first thing I don't really like about this camera. Let's get this thing off me for a second. So the second thing that I don't really like about this camera, and let me get the battery grip off before showing you. So another thing that I don't really like about this camera is another nitpicky thing, but it's the rubber around the eye cup of the camera. I usually wear mine at the side of my body, and then this rubber will rub, you know, against your body, against your coat, whatever you're wearing, and it often, the side of it comes off a bit, and you have to put it back into it, and I'm quite scared that I will one day lose the rubber that's here. And I don't know, I feel it's just not attached so well. Like I said, the camera is very well built, feels very professional, but things like that, like this little rubber, it just feels a bit flimsy. So I think Olympus could have improved there. So what else don't I like about this camera? I thought long and hard, but I really can't think of anything else that I don't like about this camera. There's just a few tiny things, you know, that could have been improved on, but other than that, I really love this camera. So in conclusion then, would I buy this again? Well, I don't know if you can technically call it buying it again, seeing as how I got this camera in the first place. But if I wouldn't have this camera anymore, if it would get stolen, it would break, whatever, then yes, I would absolutely buy the E-M1 Mark III again. I would probably compare it to the OM1, but given the price point of the OM1 compared to the E-M1 Mark III on the second-hand market now, I would definitely choose this camera right now. They go for around €1,000, I think, and I think that's a very fair price for what you're getting. I think it's still up to today's standards for a 3-year-old camera. I mean, 3 years is not that old, I would say. If you're like a pro wildlife photographer or whatever, then maybe the OM1 might suit you better. For my needs, I think this is really all I could wish for and more. I feel I barely scratched the surface on everything that this camera is capable of, and I do still want to find out more about all of the functionalities that this offers that I haven't yet tried, or try more of it. I'm really happy to have such a pro-level camera at my disposal. I love using this with my bigger lenses. If I were to have only one camera and one lens, it would be this camera. with my 25mm f1.2. I reviewed that lens earlier, but that would be my ideal kit. That said, I also love using this camera with my 7-14mm Pro wide-angle lens with the 100-400 like I mentioned earlier. I think it combines great with all the Pro lenses. I really love that about it. And yeah, all in all, this is definitely my favorite camera, my most used camera as well probably. So I would buy it again. I hope that helps you in some way if you're informing yourself about this camera. I'm happy to hear what you think about this camera. Please let me know in the comments. If you have any further questions, don't hesitate to ask them. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.